Good morning, everybody. Shabbat Shalom, a good Sabbath to everyone. May your day be blessed. May there be life in it. May there be joy, laughter. May there also be wisdom and understanding flowing as a river from heaven. May there be an opening of the knowledge of the kingdom of heaven. And may there be a invasion of the heavenly thought, way, and action and word into our world today. Today is the day of Shabbat Vayera. That is the fourth of the 54 parshas of Torah. And the words at the beginning, the name that's been given to this parsha, means, and he appeared. It's referring to the Creator himself. And doing something that I refer to as breaking the finity barrier, from infinity into finity, to coming out of the invisible into the visible, coming out of the incorporeal and spiritual only into the realm where there is a manifestation, an obvious appearance. And so this is, and he appeared. It begins from Genesis chapter 18, verse 1, through Genesis chapter 22, verse 24. Many beautiful stories. This is advanced kingdom in enterprise. This is the strategic initiative that we referenced last week, the king's plan to redeem mankind, bloodline by bloodline, and household by household, and to restore creation to its original intended Edenic state of beauty, fruitfulness, shalom, and harmonious interaction, and to do so valley by valley, village by village, hillside by hillside, square inch or square meter by square meter. So the strategic initiative is on. Avraham, the chosen vessel, Abraham as he's known in the Western world, Avraham is in. And his wife Sarah is more or less in. And so what we're seeing is the strategic initiative is getting started. Last week we had the openings, the first level of interactions. That was chapter 12, verse 1 of Genesis, through the end of chapter 17 last week, and that was the youth stage. And no matter what age you're called to this strategic initiative, you go through a youth stage. Youth, adolescence, childhood, adolescence, and then you reach levels and levels of maturity. This is not a one-time thing. You don't just get bopped on the head and you're suddenly there. This is a process, and so we've come through the first stages of childhood, and maybe we're right now at the edges of adolescence going into adulthood. And that's where Avram is when we start. He is at the oasis of Hebron, near the oaks of Mamre, Elonei Mamre, as it's called in the Hebrew. He is at this strategic location. Something big is about to happen in his world. Something is going to happen that will rock the world as it is known. It looks like it's going a certain way. It looks like devastation, destruction, perversion, corruption is winning the day. But there is about to be an intervention. And this intervention is going to result in the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah. And that destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah, we'll talk about that at some degree as to why and why now. I mean, back in Genesis chapter 14, whenever Lot moved to Sodom, whenever he and Abraham parted ways, and Abraham took to the high country, and Lot took to the village, the valley of the Jordan River, and to the cities of the plain. When that happened, the Holy One told us years ago, decades ago, that the men of Sodom were bad. They were so dangerous. They were hatim. They were always walking in the backwards direction. They were always going the opposite way of what the Holy One had planned. They were hatim, the first level of description of them. Second thing is they were full of self-will, and they never would let go of their self-will for any purpose. They wanted to fulfill their desires, their appetites, their urges. That was the way of man. And so we see that Sodom was the picture, the illustration. All these cities of the plain were following its example. And Sodom is evidencing the absolute deepest level of rejection of the Holy One and his plan. possible. So that's where we are. Abraham lives in this world. Sarai and the herdsman, Eleazar the servant, Hagar and Ishmael, who are coming along, they are also in this world. We have to deal with the fact that we live in the area of perverse cities. Now, the reason I point that out is because so do you. And this is part of the game, part of the strategy of the Holy One to tell us you will always live near Sodom and Gomorrah. You call them by different names. You may call them Dallas or Houston or Johannesburg, or Houston or wherever. You may call them L.A., you may call them New York, you may call them Washington, D.C., you may call them Paris, wherever you are going to live next to these cities where Hataim and Ra'ot are the order of the day, the normal, ordinary thing. So you need to learn to deal with that, not as a child, not as an adolescent, and we'll talk about what those factors mean, but as a mature adult and realizing that you impact that. You have an opportunity during your lifetime to have some impact on some people there in your respective Sodoms and Gomorrahs. Don't panic, don't freak out, don't fret over evildoers, as the psalmist will tell you later. Learn how to maturely deal with, according to the strategic initiative, the cities, the dark cities and the dark areas of the world. So the Holy One is going to take us into phase 2, as I call it, of his strategic initiative. Are you ready? Because we're going to have to step up our game a little bit. We can't go in naively. We can't go in from the standpoint of being childish in our ways and our thoughts, and I want to kind of address that. What we are going to be introduced to in this parsha, the first time it's going to be mentioned in Torah or in the Bible at all, is something called the way of the Lord, or the way of the Holy One, or the way of Jehovah, or the way, whichever way you pronounce it. I would morally say the way of our Father who is in heaven, because that way I don't get in too much trouble with anybody out there who has theological bent. The way of the Holy One, the way of our King. We're introduced to that, the way, the Derek Adonai. It's pronounced or spoken in the Hebrew tongue. We're going to be introduced to this for the first time. That not only does he have a strategic initiative, a plan, he has a way. He's going to make a way. He is providing a way, and this way is going to be a big deal forever. This way of the Holy One is going to be such a marvelous thing. As a matter of fact, it's going to be what Rebbe Shaul of Tarsus, known as Saul or Paul by Western thinkers, is going to say, I follow the way, which you call a sect. But I follow all the things that are written in the Torah and the prophets. And he's going to describe everything that the Bible is going to tell us, everything that the Torah talks about, everything the prophets talk about, everything the Messiah taught us is about the way, the Derek Adonai. So we are being introduced to this process. And this is something that I counsel you, attention, children and adolescents. Do not try this at home. Not without expert, battle-tested, expert counsel and guidance. This is black belt stuff for those of you who have ever been in a martial art. This is the black belt, learning the way of the Holy One, not just the concept of who he is and believing in him, understanding he has a strategy and he has a pathway. Now, derek is a Hebrew word which comes from a verb which means to tread a garden or tread in a field. If you've ever had to tread in a field that's growing with crops, maybe it's just a garden and you have vegetables, you know you need to watch where you walk. Learn to watch where you walk. You don't step on the squash plant. You don't step on the pepper plant. You don't step in the middle. You don't crush because your feet, your weight will cause an injury. Or you may step into a place where there's a snake, a serpent waiting. He said you need to walk in accordance with strategy and wisdom and initiative and intentionality to walk in areas that will bring forth fruit in your garden. Be cooperative, be participating in the plan. The plan is not for you to have a nice walk and tread wherever you want to tread. The plan is for you to grow a garden, a fruitful garden, and to bring forth the crop and the fruit of it. Well, this is what the way is. The way of the Holy One is the way through to keep things growing the way they're supposed to grow, to keep from you getting damaged or you damaging other things or people in the process. And so we have this, the way. I call it the strategical methodical. How about that? Sometimes my words, I know too many words, I think. Methodical. The strategic, methodical treading or footwork. This is king. We've talked about the brush strokes of the king, the Elohim signature, how you recognize the creative force at work in a certain thing because he has certain patterns he follows, certain brush strokes. That's just his hand. But the way is what he does with his feet. The way is his footwork. The way is which he interacts with the world, engages with the world. The way is which he leaves a footprint as well as a brush stroke. So here we are. I want to contrast the way of the Holy One with the way of ordinary fallen men. If you don't know what you're different from, you won't know what you're trying to be. So the way of the Holy One is not going to be anything like the way of fallen men. What is the way of fallen men? Well, Genesis 6:12 tells about it's a selfish, immature, corrupt way of fallen humans. If you understand what Yeshua said, what Paul said in 1 Corinthians 13, he began it with the last verse of chapter 12. And he says, "Behold, will I show you a more excellent way, a derek. Behold, I want to show you a more excellent way." And so that's how he introduced what we know as chapter 13, which is the love chapter, and he's going to go through the whole process of the love chapter. And he's going to tell us all about what love is, and ahava in Hebrew, or agape in Greek. We get these different phrases that we're familiar with, but he said, I want to tell you what this is and define it for you, show you what it looks like in real time, in real ways, that do not look like you're treading wildly and in your own selfish manner out in the world. This makes it look like you're actually following a pattern. You're following a strategic pathway. And so he says at the end, he says, when I was a child, this is beginning in verse 11, after he's described the excellent way of love, he says, now, when I was a child, I spoke, I understood, I thought as a child does. My speaking, my words, my comprehension, my understanding, my opinions, all my thought processes, and then the way and the things I actually did think, the things that crossed my mind and I let myself think, that was all childish ways. But when I became a man, he says, I put away childish things. Now, we need to understand this if we understand what this Torah portion is going to teach us. If we understand the way of the Holy One, we need to understand that it involves putting away the childish things, the childish what? The childish words, the childish understandings, and the childish thinking, the childish thoughts. That is the way we're going to learn. We've got to put away what the Genesis 6:12 description of man in its fallen state is, and begin to step instead into the way of the Holy One, the strategic, trodden path he wants us to follow that will bring about the fruit that he wants us to produce. And so he says, it goes on and says, I put away childish things. At the end of verse 13 he says, and now abide. If we put away, we keep putting away. What's left when you finish putting away? This is Paul's statement. This is so you understand the way of the Holy One. The more excellent way, as Paul. The way is to get down to three things. You put away everything else. You've discarded every other way of thinking, every other way of speaking, every other way of understanding and opining, having opinions formed. You put away all that stuff and you come down to three things. Three foundational things. Emunah, tikva, the ahava. In English translations from King James forward, it says faith, hope, and love. This is maturity. This is the way of the Holy One. And everything else is the pathways, the diversions, the off-ramps of the way of the Holy One. So if you're doing anything that's not based in emunah, faith, pistis in Greek, in tikva, hope, or elpis in Greek, and ahava, which is love in English, a very special kind of love in English, kind of unknown to human beings, without the imprint and the footprint of God all over it. And then in Greek, of course, that's agape. Now, this idea of shedding, that's why I said if you're children, if you're adolescents, because children, what is a child? How does a child speak? He blabbers. He just, something comes into his thoughts, and you don't even know what he's talking about. These little kiddies just blabbers, and he knows maybe what he's trying to say, but he doesn't even communicate it well. This is talking when I was a child. I spoke as a child. We couldn't make ourselves understood. As a matter of fact, we talked about nothing and nonsense, and it made no impact upon our world. Other people say, "Oh, that's cute. Isn't that cute?" He cursed. Isn't that cute? He said, "Da-da." Isn't that cute? I mean, this is sort of the childish thing. It's cute, but that's about all it does. It doesn't have any impact and influence. It doesn't change anything. It doesn't bring about the fruit in the world. So this is the way you speak childishly. Understanding. What do you understand in childish? Feels good when you hold me and hug me and feed me and change my diaper. Don't take my toy. It hurts when you take my toy. I don't like it whenever other people get attention and I don't get attention. This is the way of understanding of a child. You know a lot of adults who have this childlike understanding. Maybe you've been one of them in your recent past, or at least a distant past, where it's all about, I don't like the way you're doing this. It's not making me feel good. It's all about how I feel. It's all about whether I like this or don't like this. It's all about my appetites. And then you get to adolescence. Okay, that's childhood. And I didn't mention what you think. What does a child think? What do they think about? Themselves. That's all they know. They think about themselves. They think about what will make them feel better. Well, anyway, that's a child. Adolescence. At a certain stage, usually educators usually tell us it's between maybe ages 11 and 12, about the time of the onset of puberty, a little bit before age of puberty. Something happens in the mind, the brain, the human brain, and the childhood development. And they begin to be able to focus more on abstract thought, abstract concepts, as opposed to just what's there in front of me. No, maybe metaphors mean something to them suddenly. Similes begin to have some impact. You begin to abstractualize. That's why you can go into algebra. You can see patterns. You can go into geometry. You can see things happening as opposed to just 2 plus 2 equals 4, which is the mathematical basic level of childhood. Now, we see this developing, and so at adolescence, what do you focus on? I want people to like me. I don't want them to not like me. I want to be popular. I don't want to be unpopular. I don't want to be the outcast. I don't want to be the one who's not understood. This is the adolescent mindset. I want to play with my thinking capacities. I want to play with my newfound sensuality thought processes. I want to play with them. I want to test the limits. This is adolescent thinking. This is adolescent approach. I want to test the limits of what I can get by with. And I've heard things that are not good for me. I've heard that things are not beneficial. I've heard that things will potentially harm me or harm other people. But I want to try it for myself. I don't believe I'm going to fall victim to that. I don't think it's going to hurt me. This is adolescent thinking, adolescent speech, adolescent way. And what do you talk about when you're in adolescence? Boy, if you ever get the chance to sit in a restaurant next to some teenagers who don't have an adult present, just listen to their conversation for a few minutes. If you can understand the the language, the vocabulary that they're throwing at you, or if you want to, but you're going to find out they talk in weird ways. So I've just given you this picture of the way requires us to put aside the selfish, the instinctual, the emotional stuff that we think about. And then also this sense of we got to be socially correct. We got to get along. We got to be like other people. We want to make other people like us. That's the childish and the adolescent processes. But when you get to maturity, when you become an adult, when you become a man, and you put away childish things. You put away the adolescent things, and you put on only these three things. What is of emunah? What is of faith? Pistis. What is of tikva? What is of hope? What is of elpis? And what is of ahava? What is of love? What is of agape? Anything else, you discard, you devalue, you undervalue. Now, that's why I told you, don't try this at home. Children, adolescents, you need a guide, you need an expert, you need a battle-tested person like Abraham is about to become to be able to show you how to put aside everything besides emunah and tikva and ahava. Everything besides faith, hope, and love. We're going to see this manifested. We're going to see certain things happen in this parsha. I've had to give you that introduction because we're going to see Avram as our pattern, as our pioneer. There's a beautiful song by Rick Pino a few years ago. He wrote this song called Pioneer. And if you haven't ever heard it, forget all what you may think about Rick Pino or anything else. Just listen. I don't care about that. Listen to the song. If you go on YouTube, you go on wherever, listen to Pioneer by Rick Pino. And you hopefully will be touched by that process and understanding that what we're called to be is pioneers, but that means blazing a trail. That means going where somebody else has not gone, going according to a plan, but going in such a way that's going to bring people in flux afterwards, to follow afterwards, and have a solid foundation to trot upon. And so if we can understand that, I recommend that. Abraham is our pioneer. That's why he's mentioned so many times by Yeshua. Yeshua just loved to talk about Abraham. He absolutely loved to, and he loved to have these discussions with the Pharisees and the Sadducees and the common people about Abraham. He even talked to Lazarus, the poor man, about Abraham. This guy is our pioneer. He's showing you how to move from childishness through adolescence and into maturity to the place where everything is emunah and tikva and ahava. Well, we'll talk about what those three things may be as later, but of this thing Shaul said of the way that goes through to maturity, Shaul said in Acts 24, 14 through 16, "This I confess to you, that according to the way, derek, which you call a sect, that is how I worship, serve the God of my fathers. Shemaing and amaning, believing, it says in English, all things that are written in the Torah and in the prophets. I have tikva, I have hope, I have tikva in God, which they themselves also accept, that there will be a resurrection of the dead, both of the just and of the unjust." Blow your minds. And that being so, I always myself strive to have, English it says, conscience without offense toward God and men. Acts 24, 14 through 16. I just encourage you to read. Everybody wants to talk about what Paul did away with and what he didn't do. This is what he said. This is what he said about himself. This is the mission. He said, I came to show you the way. I came to be the new pioneer. The next level pioneer in the same way of Abraham. This is the pathway that goes. And what's left at the end? Emunah, I believe. Tikva, I have hope. And ahava, I have no offense. Love does not keep offense. Does not take offense. I have faith, I have hope, and I have love, and that is all based upon my following of the things that are written in the Torah and in the prophets. Now, that's an amazing statement that he makes. Let's see if I can follow it up. There's certain things I want to talk about. The first thing is some Hebrew verbs. Everything in Hebrew, everything in the Torah text relates to action. We're talking about the way of the Holy One, and it's about moving. It's about doing things. It's not about thinking stuff. It's not about abstract concepts. It's not about what you believe in your head. It's about what you do. And so when we talk about what does the Hebrew text really trying to tell you, look at what's happening, not what's being said. That's why I would encourage people that if you're reading the letters of Paul, don't get fixated on what he's saying in theory. Look at what he's doing. And when he says, now therefore, brothers, look at the therefore. Now, therefore, I beseech you, brethren, by the mercies of God, not that you have a good theology, not that you get your doctrine right, that you present your bodies a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable unto God, that you may prove that which is a good, acceptable, and perfect will of God. And no man may think more highly of himself than he ought. Now, if you keep going through that process in chapter 12 of Romans, you begin to see what he's doing. He's outlaying the way. Derek Adonai. That has been the present way all the way from Abraham all the way to the following. He's going to talk about let love be sincere. He's going to talk about all the different, I won't go through the whole process. You can read it yourself. But what the key is to learn that there are certain, in every little section of Torah, in every section of Holy Writ, there are going to be verbs that are supposed to catch your attention. Catch your spirit and take you up out of the natural, physical realm, out of this mental, intellectual, pseudo-intellectual realm where you think you know stuff, and catch you up in a desire to follow in the way. To not just think stuff and know stuff and believe stuff, to do stuff, to walk in those footprints. I remember I was in college Bible school, and anyway, I'm sitting there and with my guitar in my hand, and I'm just thinking about following Yeshua, following the Master, and what it means and how beautiful it is. And one of the verses just came out. I know a place where rivers run slowly, still waters, green pastures, mountains so high. His feet tread there, and each step is holy. And I want to go there someday ere I die. Goes on, the song goes on, but those words, his feet tread there. Now this is the idea of the way he walks, the way he moves, the way he proceeds, the way he strategically brings the initiative into the world. This is the process. And so the verb that we're going to talk about first is the verb that starts it all. It's called Vayera. That's the Hebrew phrase. It means and he appeared. But the verb at the root of it is ra'ah. Resh, aleph, hey. The R sound, the ah sound, and the sound. Ra'ah. And this is the verb root that we're supposed to be called up in. The Spirit is supposed to awaken, quicken inside of you. When you think about what he's going to talk to you about vision, it's seeing. But it's not just seeing, it's beholding. It's not just beholding, it's captivating your attention. It's getting in the paracentral region as opposed to the peripheral. We can see things at about 18% of our field of vision is paracentral. And that's what we intensely focus upon. We only see other things are happening, but we don't pay that much attention to them. Learning to focus your attention on what is important is a key factor of the way. If you're not looking where you're going, you will not get where you're going. You'll get where you're going, you won't get where you're supposed to go. So this idea of focusing, ra'ah. So the first Hebrew verb is ra'ah. It means to see, to behold, to take note. Now, this is fascinating in the context of spiritual life. Because I have told you, I've tried to make clear to you, as Paul tried to make clear to all of us, and Yeshua made clear to all of us, and the prophets made clear to all of us, there is a seen realm, but that is only a small fragment of what's really happening. There is a greater, much more significant, much more impactful, unseen realm. And so we do not walk according to that which we've seen, we walk according to that which is we know as coming forth from the unseen realm. This is emunah. This is the idea of emunah. We see, but we don't live by what we see. We see beyond what we see. And so this idea of the seen realm, we look and see the seen realm, but we see it through the eyes of the one who sits on the unseen, at the throne of the unseen realm. This is the way. The way is not to see things as they look to human beings. This is why we put away childish things. Childish things cannot see beyond what's right in front of your face. You hurt me. You're doing wrong. You're a bad person. You made a mistake. This is not what I want. That's what you see when you look at things only at what's in front of your face. He says, no, I want you to look at what you can see, but I want you to look at it through my eyes, eternal eyes. Eyes that see it as having, yes, maybe perhaps fallen for a while, but having the potential with the right pathway, with the right initiative, with the right steps of treading to make some significant inroads into that and bring it back to the true path. Now, that's maturity. That's why you try to look at things and decree things based on what you can see. You're going to miss so much because you're going to be actually taking people away from the true way of the Holy One. It needs to be what He plans. So, ma omi, ata ro'eh. What or who do you see? This is what He asked Jeremiah, the Holy One. Said to Jeremiah as He was awakening him, calling him forth. He says, now, Jeremiah, now that I've put my words in your mouth, now that I've touched you, now that I've called you forth to be a prophet to the nations, now that I've brought you forth for my service, now I have to ask you this question. What do you see? Ma'ata roe. What do you see? So as we sit and we face the world and the generation we live in, and the people we're around, and the cities beside us, and our own built-in limitations and limitations that people have put on us, our glass ceilings. I'll use that figure because Sarah is going to have a glass ceiling. In this process, Sarah is going to find out she has a glass ceiling. And she's going to recognize the glass ceiling, but she knows she's going to find out she can transcend that glass ceiling or that barrier, that limitation. She was barren. She's 90 years old and she's barren. And Abraham's 100 years old and he's barren. And what we're going to find out is that with these walls can be transcended if you have the vision for it. If you have the ra'ah, if you can look beyond what's there to see what could be, to see what the Holy One desires to be, see what His way would call forth, then you can see that. So what do you see or who do you see? To see means to look at paracentrally. From fixating your gaze upon. I mean, I see many things in this room. But at certain times I try to look at one individual person, like I'm looking at Hollis right now. That's my paracentral vision. I'm focusing on him. This idea of the Holy One trains us how to focus on what He wants us to see, on who He wants us to see. But not on the person that's right in front of our eyes only. Not just them and their entire life, and their household, and their family, and their children's children after them, and their bloodline, and their nation, and the people they will influence, the spheres on which they will have influence, workplaces, neighborhoods, marketplaces. To see all of that when I look ahead at one individual in this room, to begin to see this. This is the idea of getting paracentral vision, inspired and empowered from the Holy One, Ra'ah. So part of the way of the Holy One requires vision and this ra'ah verb. It should be catching you up right now. Hopefully, you've not been too distracted by all the words I throw at you, and you're hearing this. What do you see, son? What do you see, daughter? Are you letting your eyes look into the unseen realm and the future and the purpose of all things, or are you getting caught up with something you don't like? You know, I sometimes go back and watch a little bit of these videos. Sometimes my tie's crooked. And I sit there and I can't think about anything else besides the fact that my tie is crooked. Sometimes I look at a person and they're walking in stupidity or abject rebellion. And I can't get past the fact that they're walking in stupidity and or abject rebellion. He says, what do you see? Don't look at stuff like that. Don't get paracentrally focused upon that stuff. That's periphery. That's not paracentral. Paracentral is bloodline, potential, possibility, hope. So the idea of the way. First thing is to focus paracentral. The next thing is to look at long enough, well enough to get revelation from it. The end of this parsha has the story of Moriah. Moriah. The name Moriah is tied to this word ra'ah, but everything that happens at Moriah, as it's known to the Western world, is all tied up with this verb ra'ah. As a matter of fact, he says, on the mountain of the Holy One, Yahweh, Yahweh, the Holy One, Adonai, the one, the Father who sent, whatever you want to call him, it is Yireh. Yara, Ara'ah. He will be seen. He will be manifested. He will appear. This goes all the way through this parsha. If we don't get Ra'ah, the concept, the calling to look beyond what you normally see, you'll never mature. You'll never be a pioneer. You can't go where you can't see in the spiritual realm. So this idea of fixing your gaze, receiving revelation, truly noticing, observing, perceiving the possibilities and potential for those who actually walk with the Holy One, what might happen if you just did something a certain way, the way he says. To appreciate the attributes and nuances, to respond to at a spirit level, not on a physical gut level. Most of us respond to stuff on an emotional gut level. That is childish, the ultimate childishness. To form opinions based on how it makes us feel, or how it fits with our worldview, our pseudo-intellectual opinions. That's adolescence. How are we supposed to respond to what we see? With nothing but emunah, tikva, and ahava. Oh me, oh my. The way of the Holy One is just as radical today as it was back then for Abraham, as it was for Shaul, as it is for each one of us. This is the idea. So he says, okay, to appreciate the attributes and nuances and respond to at a spirit level, not a physical, emotional gut level. And then to draw energy, inspiration, and motivation by what we see in the spiritual realm to actually act and engage. Wow. Okay, I've just dumped a lot of stuff on you just by virtue of this verb ra'ah, and I'm hoping that as we sit in this Shabbat atmosphere, the Sabbath atmosphere of Kedusha, of energy, that ra'ah, because I want to see more. I hope you're crying out in your spirit. I want to see what you see. I want to see what you're showing me. I want to see what's beyond what my flesh is reacting to. I want to see beyond the peripheral into the paracentral that you're looking at this particular stage. Well, the second key Hebrew word is za'ak. Zayin, ayin, kuf. Za'ak. And it's usually translated as outcry or to cry out. When you see something and it makes you cry out, you need to understand, is my flesh making me cry out, or is it my spirit making me cry out? Am I crying out for what? For what? For judgment? Or for help? What am I crying out for? And so we have this parsha, this issue. What are we going to see? The Holy One is going to talk to Abraham in this parsha. And he's going to tell him many things. We'll get to that in a little while. But he's going to say, the outcry. I'm hearing an outcry. What is my out? The outcry is about Sodom, as we call it in English. The outcry. And this cry is coming forth, and I will go down to see. I'm going down on my way. I'm taking my pathway. I'm moving in this direction. I'm going to actually engage it to see if it is as it has been declared to me. You know, you can cry all you want, but if you're not crying what he's expecting to see, I hear a lot of intercession. But I think we're going to get a pattern of what intercession can look like and how you can have the wrong idea in mind with Abraham. What moves you, though, to cry? Where is your outcry? Have we gotten so numb? Have we become so numb by virtue of living so close to Sodom and Gomorrah and having these limitations and restrictions that we've just accepted as normal, the gravitational pull of normality? Have we gotten so in our rut and in our routine that we have lost our cry, lost our za'ak? I want to awaken your za'ak today. That's the part of this parsha, to be a mature pioneer of the kingdom, to walk in the way of the Holy One in ways that leave an impact upon the world. You can't give up your za'ak. You just nearly refine it. To not speak like you spoke when you were a child, not speak like you spoke when you were an adolescent, but to speak out of emunah, speak out of tikva, to speak out of ahava. What moves your cry? And what, on the other hand, are you content to just let torment your righteous soul? Of course, I'm talking about Lot. In 2 Peter chapter 2, we have this description of Lot. And he's living in Sodom and Gomorrah, or Sodom. He's living there every day. Every day he goes to work, every day he goes to market, every day he does whatever he does. He's living in the midst of it. And the description about Lot, which is the anti-way, is that he was tormented in his most righteous soul. That's what 2 Peter tells us about. Do you know that being tormented in your righteous soul does nobody 1 ounce or iota of good? It isn't. This is what we do. We sit in America and we watch the news or we watch the social media, and we're tormented in our most righteous souls. And we fuss and fume and complain like adolescents. He said, that's the way of fallen, broken men. You have no vision and you have no outcry and you have no impact. You have no kingdom flow in you. So don't just be content to let the evil around you, the darkness around you, torment you in your most righteous soul. Get inspired, get encouraged, get involved, get motivated. Go in the way of the Holy One, and let's get the strategic initiative operative here. You're not going to change whole cities, but you can change the atmosphere wherever you go. You can begin to show a different perspective, a different way. You can be a pioneer in the middle of a great deep forest. The third Hebrew word, we've talked about ra'ah, we've talked about za'ak. Now I want to talk to you about a third Hebrew verb that's very prevalent in this passage. Zachach. Sounds almost like you having something in your throat. Zachach. Zade, het, and kuf. And it means, I'm sorry, I'll get that later. Zadak is the first one. Zachach is the fourth one. I'll go with Zadak is the, and it in English we translate it as make it right. Make it straight. Take a crooked path, make it straight. Righteousness will later. We have a very strange Western concept of what righteousness is. In Hebrew, if you have a pathway and you veer off, what do you have to do? You have to go back to the pathway. You have to make it straight. That's what righteousness, that's what Zadok is. To Zadok means to see the straight path and return to the straight path. To stay on that straight path, this pathway of the way of the Holy One. So Zadok is in that way. It's to make straight, level, and plumb. To make something straight, level, and plumb, like a contractor, a builder. You should understand, you don't want to build a structure that's not plumb. That doesn't have good 90-degree angles. That's where strength comes out of the structure, is to have 90-degree angles. You don't want it to be unlevel. It won't be plumb, or if it's plumb and unlevel, you got real problems because it's going to slide off. Whatever hill it is or whatever the incline is. So the idea of learning how to walk in such ways to build something that's plumb and straight into your world. It's got plenty of angles and other directions and other pathways. We want to straighten it out. And so this idea of Zadok. And so in Genesis 18, the Holy One's going to say, I have known Abraham. The purpose for which I've made myself known to Abraham is that he may teach his children and his household following to walk in Derek Hashem, to walk in the way of the Holy One, which we've been talking about. And then he's going to define what that looks like to do Zedekah, to do that which is straight and plumb and level, that which is fitting to a building of a great kingdom or a great structure, that which has significant substance to it. It's not morally issue, it's not the issue. Hopefully it will be moral, but that's not the issue. The issue is it a good foundation? Are you a pioneer leaving a trail that others can follow that will take them somewhere? So this issue of make straight, level, and plumb. Follow a true course. Leave a trustworthy foundation and strong fortress-like stronghold walls for the people of the kingdom to find rest, to find consolation, to find energy, to find food, to find nurture. This is the idea of Zadok. Are we hungering for Zadok? Are we hungering for that as opposed to more opinions about who's right and wrong, who's good and evil, who's fair and unfair, who's just and unjust? Are we hungry to actually leave a good, solid pathway of true course, an example, a model for others to follow? Are we ready to be pioneers? Are we also ready to leave a foundation on which they can keep building generation after generation after generation? And it will stand the test of time because it has a strong, level, plumb foundation laid? Well, that's the key. Zadok, is that which a man can say and do that's in harmony with and consistent with the strategic initiative of the Holy One and the grand plan for the redemption and restoration of all things? So, question, what quality of trail have you been blazing? How solid a foundation have you been laying? How trustworthy and valuable an example have you been leaving for people who will come with you or come behind you in this process? This is the vision of the grand plan. The vision of the great calling of the Holy One is not to just go to heaven when you die and get a bunch of riches while you're on earth. It is to do righteousness and justice, as we're going to say. Do Zedek, to build this foundation for other people. To build this structures that are plumb and straight and level, that do not have the distractions and the diversions and the perversions and the corruptions and the selfishness and the self-interest of the childishness or adolescence. So that's the third verb. The fourth verb I said was, I'll just use shafat. In English, we read that to judge, and boy, does that ever get you in trouble. Matter of fact, if what you want to be is a judge, then you'll never be part of the strategic initiative. You'll never be part of the grand plan. You take yourself, you remove yourself from the grand plan, because what you said is, I'm fixing on vision only on what I see right here. I'm not getting a vision. I'm not getting inspiration. I'm not getting energy. I'm not getting impetus. I'm just seeing what I see. I don't like it, so I'm going to judge it. Or I do like it, so I'm going to judge it favorably. That's the issue of why we misunderstand anything about what this means, shaphat means. It means to set in place and put into operation according to a strategic plan. Once you build something, at certain stages, builders understand this, you reach a place called substantial completion, and you turn over the building or the house or whatever it is to the people who are going to occupy it, and you begin to start the processes up. The plumbing has to work. The electricity has to turn on and off when you flip the switch. This is to make things functional. So what does it take to make the kingdom way functional? That's shaphat. To find the pattern, the practice, the steps that need to be taken to make the kingdom function, make the plan work in actual operation. That's what shaphat means. It means to oversee and give directions like an architect would on a building project, or a project or a system manager would, or a superintendent would. The idea of shaphating, learning that we are called to do this, not judge. I don't have time to discuss Matthew 7 and the issues of what he was talking about, Yeshua was talking about. But you can understand, there's a difference between what people want to do and what he calls us to do with regard to our ability to determine pathways forward. So shaphating means to have carve a pathway forward that involves increasing the functionality of everything we touch. So what do we prioritize? As Bob Seger once said, what to leave in, what to leave out, what to put away as childish things, as adolescent things, what to hold on to, what is bringing forth what? Emunah, tikva, and ahava, faith, hope, and love. What is bringing that to the forefront? And so, now a question that pending to everybody is, are you managing your assigned project, your delegated ecosystem well? Are you a good and faithful servant, a steward of what God has given to you? Or are you acting like a child, responding emotionally, seeing only what you see right in front of your eyes, not the potential and the possibilities, focusing on what you don't like, how it affects you or makes you feel, as opposed to what the plan of the Holy One is for redemption and restoration? Fifth Hebrew verb. This is the one I started to try to talk to you about. The tongue twister. Zakak. Zakak. Sade, chet, and kuf. Now, this is going to have its little lines of work throughout this parsha as well. In English, you'll really read it to laugh. Laughter is a very powerful, powerful tool. We know that our Creator laughs, right? He sits in the heavens, and He laughs. This is why it's not a good idea to think your call in life is to be tortured in your most righteous souls. If you're tortured in your most righteous souls and you're screaming about how horrible and unjust the world is and how bad and how messed up they are, then you're not laughing. And you're not bringing... Here's the thing about laughter. Laughter is contagious. We're going to talk about Sarah. And this whole parsha has this conversation about different kinds of laughter. You know, there's a laughter that emanates from the spinal cord, the brain stem, and the limbic region of the brain. I know we're maybe a little scientific or whatever, but according to there's a deep laughter that's spontaneous. You don't think about it. It just hits you, and out of your limbic system, your spinal cord, your brain stem, it just flows. That's the most beautiful laughter of all. That's like the laughter that you want to just get caught up in. And so this is the infectious laughter. Have you lost your laugh? I mean, I see a lot of serious folk out there, not necessarily in this room, but I see a lot of serious folk out and everywhere I go, Boy, they're upset about a bunch of stuff. They're tortured in the most righteous soul, I know. But the question is, have you lost your ability to laugh? Because laughter is contagious. Laughter is a release of joy. Laughter, actually, scientifically, it releases endorphins in the human body. And those endorphins are kind of like pheromones. Once you release it in you, it releases in other people. And you see people laughing because you're laughing. They don't even know why they're laughing. It's out of their limbic region. It's not out of their cerebral cortex, their frontal lobe. It is out of the deepest parts of who they are. They are responding to this because you've released the chemicals into the body. Now, Sarah is going to laugh, but we're going to see other people laugh at a different kind of laugh. There's another way to laugh. There's a way to laugh out of your cerebral cortex, out of your frontal lobe. And that's what you think about, and you force a laugh. You laugh almost arrogantly. Cackle. The old movies, the horror movies came up with a really good, they know how to cackle to make you, there's a cackle. So the issue of laughter is Sarah's laughter was sweet, infectious, came out of the deepest ranges of her internal, and she named her kid that. Yitzhak means laughter. Sakak. You can hear the verb in that. Isaac, as we say it in English. That's why I hate to use the term Isaac, because it loses that. You lose the fact that it's all about sakak. It's all about laughter. It's all about life and happiness and spontaneous eruption of response to the goodness of God. Well, that's what sakak is. But in this parsha, we're going to see two other kinds of laughter. The first one is whenever things are getting really bad in Sodom, the angels go to Sodom, and nightfall comes. And yeah, it's been pretty bad for a long time, but man, the angels are in Lot's house, and here come the whole city, all the men from every quarter, rich and poor. That's why ethnicity, class, social class doesn't make any difference. Once the perversion of humanity takes place, there ain't no one better than another. They're coming from all different angles, all different sides, and they don't make any bones about it. It's almost like they want those angels brought out there, and I don't have to go into detail. Okay, so this is what they want, and then Lot turns to his sons-in-law, the ones who are part of his family and great he's been involving himself with, and he says, "Flee, get out! This is about to turn ugly." And they zakakt. They, in their intellect, in their arrogance, in their approach, they laughed at him. They laughed him to scorn and said, "You're a joke." Now, this is a form of laughter where we are more, that is not contagious. That is revolting, repulsive. So I understand. And now the third issue is we have Ishmael, much later in the parsha. After Yitzhak is born and is a child, a very young child, at his weaning celebration. Here's Ishmael. He's 13 years old. And Ishmael has a wild donkey of a man. And we've heard about his prophecy, who he is. And so he mocks and he laughs, zakak. He zakaks toward, and Sarah hears him scornfully mocking and laughing at, making fun of, making sport of, and maybe even picking on in a very violent way, however you wish to interpret that process, Yitzhak. And that is the catalyst for removing Ishmael from the home. You can't have that kind of mocking in a kingdom covenant household. A mocker cannot be among you. You need to put away the childish things. Put away the adolescence. Now, this idea of as we sit here in this room, I want to call forth, because I believe this parsha calls forth true, open, genuine laughter and joy. And if you've lost that, you have lost something very, very precious. Something essential to the kingdom message. If all you are is a fuss budget, a complainer, a griper, a know-it-all, a judge, a critic, if that's who you are, do you understand why you are not being used? Why you are not the cult, why you are being put on the shelf and put aside because you are not trustworthy to be released. You're not safe to play with others. You're Ishmael in a world that's designed to be laughing. You're the men of the household of the sons and sons-in-law of Lot who think this is the way it's done, and you're getting in our way. You're preventing us from doing the things we want to do, and we'll laugh you to scorn. You're a fool. You're a fool. And that's the idea. So this issue of, are you known for your laughter, folks? Are you known for laughter? This is part of the matriarchal gift Sarah gave to us. That's why we honor, we love, we bless each other in Sarah's name. Our daughters, we bless in Sarah's name. May you be as Sarah and Rivka and Rachel and Leah. We do this. We're looking at her first because she gave us the gift of laughter, ability to respond with joy, unbridled joy, to let joy be the central focus of our life and not to be caught up in the negative things we see. So are you known for your laughter? And if you're not, do you want to be? Do you want to quit being known for what you're against, what you hate? I mean, yes, we are to hate sin, but that's not what we're supposed to be known for. Yes, we are to be against oppression and injustice. That's not what defines us and our purpose on life. We are here to be agents of joy. You know, in Psalm 126, he says, when the Holy One turned the captivity of Zion, we were as those who laugh, who zakak. We were full of joy. We're abundantly full of joy. This is the message of the redeemed. Not how bad the world is. Not how horrible the sinners are. Not how bad the government is. Those things may be true, but that's not our message. Our message is the joy, the laughter of freedom, the laughter of redemption, of restoration. And if we don't have it to give, how can the world receive redemption and restoration? They can't. They keep going the way they're going. They keep going the sad, sick, perverted, corrupt direction that they're already headed. We're here for another purpose, to bring them back to the idea there can be joy, hope for joy. So if you are known for your laughter, what is it that makes you laugh? A good comedian? I mean, a slapstick comedy? I mean, what makes you laugh? I'm not against any of those things. That's not my key. My point of it is, though, is there something deeper that makes you laugh even deeper than the best comedian in the world? And, of course, my generation, we had Flip Wilson and Geraldine, but we had Jerry Lewis, and we had Dick Van Dyke falling over the floor in his house, and we laughed at him and we had Opie, never could catch that fish, and Barney could never handle a bullet. We had certain things that we laughed at that were just spontaneously, oh my goodness. Here's the deal: beyond the vision, beyond the veil, is there something deeper that makes you full of joy, that brings laughter to your mind? If you think, David said it this way: restore to me not the theology of your kingdom, the joy of your Yeshua. Restore unto me the joy of your salvation, the joy of, in Hebrew, the joy of your Yeshua. Now, restore this to me. Is he a source of joy to you? Is your relationship with Yeshua, the Messiah, the Savior, however you wish to call him, whatever labels you wish to put on him, the master, the king, the teacher, whatever, the rabbi, whatever you want to call him, is your relationship with him a source of joy, or is it not? Is it or is it not? And if it Was it ever? Has it ever been? I hope it has. I know you. I know Yeshua. I know how he moves upon you. And whenever he moves upon you, after the first level of wave of, I got to leave these things behind, there's this joy of freedom. But I can, and I will, and you're with me, and I'm with you in this joy that takes place. But after a while, after years, after religion, and after science, and after medicine, and after education, and after philosophy, and after theology, and after seminary, and social media, and network news, is he still what he was? Is he still your wellspring of joy? Is he still your wellspring of laughter? Is he still the one who makes your heart glad? Because looking at faces, I don't know anymore. Sometimes I wonder. And sometimes if you look at my face, you probably wonder too. Today, this parsha, this week, this season of Vayera, look beyond. Have you lost your joy? Have you lost your contact, your dipper with which you dip out of the wells of salvation, the wells of joy? Because we need to get that back, folks. If we're going to walk in the strategic initiative, if we're going to fulfill this divine plan, if we're going to change the little areas that he gives us to influence and build a foundation and be pioneers, we can do it without that joy. That joy is the sign, the signal. Joy is a symbol of hope. Now, what are one of the three things we got to hold on to? You can't be joyful unless you're hopeful. You have a hope. Well, that's the idea of bringing that idea of joy because you've got hope. All right, so that's that extra Hebrew verb. I'm going to move into the passage. It's time to read, so if you would stand with me. There are many vignettes. We'll only have a chance to read one. The blessing of the house, before we touch these beautiful words, before we allow his holy messages from heaven to infiltrate our minds and ears, we speak this blessing out of Psalm 119. You may join us if you know it. Open our eyes, O Holy One, that we may receive wondrous things from your Torah. For we are but strangers in the earth. Do not hide your commandments from us. Our souls cry out for your judgments at all times. How can a young man keep his way pure? By living according to your Torah. For your word is a lamp unto our feet and a light unto our path. The entrance of your word brings light and understanding even to the simple. May our spirits come alive so that they can praise you. And may your judgments be our help. Our opening reading, beginning with chapter 18 of Genesis, verse 1. The Holy One appeared, and he appeared to him by Adonai Mamre, the oaks of Mamre. And he sat in the tent door, as he sat in the tent door in the heat of the day. He, being Abram, lifted up his eyes, and he looked, and he saw three men standing opposite him. And when he saw them, Ra'ah again, he ran from the tent door to greet them, and he bowed himself to the ground. And he said, My Lord, if I have found grace, if I found chen in Hebrew, if I found favor in your sight, please don't pass your servant by. Let a little water be brought, fetched, that I may wash your feet. And may you rest yourselves, strengthen your hearts under this tree. And I'll go get a morsel of bread in order to refresh your heart. And after that, you may go your way, even as you came to your servant. And they said, As you have said, make it happen. Do. The next passage begins with verse 9. And they said to him, "Where is Sarah, your wife?" He said, "Behold, she's in the tent." He said, "I will certainly return to you at the appointed time, and behold, Sarah, your wife, will have a son." Now Sarah heard in the tent door, which was behind him, and Abraham and Sarah were old, well advanced in age, and it had ceased to be with Sarah after the manner of women. So Sarah laughed within herself, saying, "After I've grown old, will I have pleasure? My Lord, being old also?" And the Holy One said to Abram, "Why did Sarah laugh? Saying, will I really bear a child, yet I'm old? Is there anything too hard for the Holy One? At the set time, I will return to you when the season comes around, and Sarah will have a son." But Sarah denied it. "I did not laugh, lo zakaki. I did not laugh," because she was afraid. Yirah. She saw things she was not aware of. And he said, "Ah, but you did laugh." The third reading begins with verse 16. "The men rose up from there, and they looked towards Sodom. And Abram went with them, and he's to see them on their way. And the Holy One said, "Shall I hide from Abram what I am doing and building, seeing that Abram is surely becoming a great and a mighty people, a great and mighty nation, and all the peoples and nations of the earth will be blessed in him? Because the reason I made myself known to him is in order that he can enjoin and teach his children and his household after him, that they may keep the way of the Holy One, to build righteousness, tzedakah, and justice, mishpat, safat, to the end, or in order that the Holy One may bring upon Avram that which he has spoken of him." And the Holy One said, "Because the outcry against Sodom and Gomorrah is great, and because their sin is very grave, I will go down now, and I will see." Well, you may be seated. May the entrance of his word bring light and understanding even to us in our simplicity. Now, this phase of covenant, this phase of strategic initiative, this phase of the grand plan is still part of what I call the divine romance. Every human being is called to a divine romance. Now, romance is not some sort of ushy-gushy, emotional, touchy feeling. A romance is a classic word which means a great adventure, a grand journey, an odyssey, as it were, a grand building of relationship over generations and over time and over places and where you go and circumstances you deal with and challenges that you face and overcome together. This is a divine romance. So each of us in this room, each of us you who are watching from wherever you are in the world through this camera and through this lens that's facing you, each of us has a unique but yet connected call to divine romance. We're at different stages of that romance as we sit. Abraham is at a very mid-level whenever we start this parsha. He is at this mid-level of divine romance. He's got a long way to go, and so do we. That's the good news. That's not bad news. That's good news. We've got a long way to walk with our King. Yeshua never focused on saying and holding on to, "Believe in me, trust in me." He always said, "Follow me." We're going somewhere, folks. We got this great odyssey we're on, this great movement that as long as you have breath in your lungs, we're on this grand journey, this odyssey together, walking someplace in my way. Walk with me, come with me, come with me. So that's where we are today. Each of us is at this stage. We're in divine romance. You have been wooed. You have been courted. You have been spied upon. If you didn't know him better, you'd think you were being stalked. He wants you. He's after you. He's after the one he created you to be. That's why he calls, his first call is lech lecha, go out to become who you were created to be. Go out from who you are and what you're used to who you're created to be. So he's in this divine romance, and you are an object of his affection and his intention and his plan and his strategy. Don't get too caught up in your own self, because everybody else in this room is too. Uniquely, differently, but yet connected in such a way that we're all working toward one strategic plan. One kingdom objective, the redemption of creation and the restoration of it to its original Edenic state. Now, this is the idea. We're in this great divine romance. And with any kind of a romance like we'd see today or think of today, there's a part of just getting to know each other. It's just the thrill of the relationship. And I hope you caught on to that. I hope this relationship is the relationship you have with the Creator of the universe. Through Yeshua, with Yeshua, being the most important, most valuable, most precious, most delightful relationship, the thing that you have in this earth, the most valuable asset on your balance sheet. I hope that's where you are. But I want to take you one step further beyond just the infatuation and the joy and the delight in the relationship. I want to get you to the stage of saying, but we have a purpose in this journey. This journey is not just my personal journey of its discovery. This journey is not just my personal way of blessing. This journey is not just so I get what he wants to give to me or makes me the best I can possibly be. This journey is for the sake of building the kingdom of heaven upon the earth. May his kingdom come, and may his will be done on earth as it is in heaven. It's going to require me to do some things, forgiving of sins, taking only what I need for the daily bread. It needs focusing on the things that are real, but that's where I want it to be. So we're at the level of walking it out, maturing our emunah, our tikva, and our ahava. English, if you want to try to translate as best you can, faith, hope, and love. Maturing in faith, maturing in hope, maturing in love. How do you mature in those things? You don't read books. I mean, you can, but it's not going to really help you. All you get is more things you can argue about with other people at the next coffee table meeting you have. About what agape versus phileo versus storge is, about what ahava in Hebrew really means. No, I'm not talking about some theological, theoretical issue. I'm talking about maturing in the actual activities of emunah, the actual activities of love, the actual activities of this thing. So this is what he's going to do. He's going to take us into testing areas of testing, areas of trial, crucibles, as it were, when our faith will be tested, when our hope will be tested, when our love for him and for fellow man, love of neighbor, love of him, is tested, and we have other options and we want to bail out, and the question is now back to the infatuation and the attention and the love that we felt. Is his relationship worth it to go deeper in the steps of faith and hope and love, even when those things are tested to the max? Now, we're going to have to deal with the fact that, first of all, we all have Sodom and Gomorrah syndrome. If you want a utopia to live in, you're going to have to look even beyond the Messianic kingdom, the 1,000-year reign. You're going to have to look all the way past 1,000 years, plus the time we got now in the tribulation, all the stuff we got going on right now, past the 1,000-year reign, what's going to be on earth. You got to look all the way to the Olam Haba, the world to come, You got to look a long way ahead. But what you want right now is a utopia where everything is what you think it should be. People behave the way you think they should. Organizations and institutions are run the way you think they ought to get run. Finances are distributed. Money is distributed. Assets are distributed according to your plan that you think would be fair and just and right. If that's what you want, this is going to be a season of extreme testing to you. And you're going to have to find out, are you going to hold on to that strange utopian vision, or are you ready to move forward in maturing in hope, faith, and love? So the Sodom and Gomorrah syndrome is, I just don't want any part of it. Me and my little family are going to hide away. We're going to build a bunker. We're just not going to associate with them. We'll find somewhere else to trade. We'll barter. We won't go to their institutions. We won't go to their educational system. We're gonna bail out. Not to set an example, because we just don't want to be around them. This is Sodom and Gomorrah syndrome. We've all got it. To some level or other, we're all poisoned by this pill of Sodom and Gomorrah syndrome. And this is why we judge and we hate and we criticize and we complain, because we're better than they are. We're more moral than they are. We think of ourselves. We just don't want them. Why did you have them? Why can't you just destroy them? Why can't you just rain down fire and brimstone from heaven on Las Vegas and New Orleans and Sin City in South Africa and Bangkok and Amsterdam and Netherlands and London? Why do we have to put up with those horrible people doing horrible things, and their horrible institutions teaching horrible lies, and their doctors saying stupid stuff because they're just blind by the pharmaceutical companies that pay them, fund them, and education system is so messed up that I don't want our children ever. Why do you have to have them here? He said, oh, this is part of the divine romance. This is where we learn the deeper things of the divine romance. This is where we get tested in our emunah. This is where you get tested this is where you can grow in your emunah. You grow in your tikvah, and you grow in your ahava. Now here's the question. The only vision that Lot had, basically, he stayed there for generations, and the only thing he brought forth was his own self, his wife up to a point, and she turned and wanted to go back and lost, and 2 unmarried children. Out of how many years of being in Sodom? He didn't have a vision beyond his nuclear family. And his vision wasn't even good enough for that nuclear family, as it turned out. There's a lot of stories about how many people were actually in Lot's family. It says in one point that he had Lot and his wife and his sons. We don't hear about sons. There's 2, plural, so it's got to be at least 2. So now we have Lot and his wife and 2 sons, which are never mentioned again. And his daughters, his unmarried daughter, he has at least 2 unmarried daughters. We know about them. And his sons-in-law, which means that he has married daughters, at least 2, and married sons-in-law, which are at least 2. If you add it all up, do you know how many you get? Let's see, 2 plus 2 plus 2 plus 2 plus 2 plus 10. 10. Nuclear family. Okay, what was the conversation between the Holy One and Abraham? Abraham says, if there's 10 Zadakwans, those who are Zadikim, those who are hearing, following the way, and laying the foundation properly, and keeping things plumb and straight, and moving in the right direction, and following the way, and being pioneers in the way of the Holy One. If there's 10 of them there, he said, well, will you destroy the wicked, the ra'ot, the He would destroy them as well as the Zedekim. And the Holy One says, of course not. You know that. You know me. You know me. Do you know him? Because if you think that's what he's here for, to call down fire and brimstone on the people you don't like, the places you don't like, the governments, the institutions that you disagree with, if you think that's what he wants to do, then you don't know him very well. The first part of this divine romance hasn't set, hasn't hit. That's not what he wants to do. He wants you and him together to go in there and begin to take and build a network of at least 10 people who are changing the environment and the atmosphere. Well, that's the plan. Well, here's this idea, but we got Sodom and Gomorrah syndrome. We've tied up. It's just about us. Just don't let them hurt us. Don't let them make my employer fire me. Don't let them take away my bank account, my Social Security, my salary, my job. Don't let them take my house. Don't let them tax me to death. Don't let them do this thing to me, oh God. It's all about my family. It's all about me. And he says, no, you're missing the point. Where's your emunah? Where's your tikvah? Now, those policies may be altogether wrong. They probably are. That's what governments do. Sinner's going to do what sinner's going to do. Pagan's going to do what pagan's going to do. It's going to happen to you. I'm not saying it's right. I'm saying that's not our focus. Our focus needs to be on something more bigger. The laughter, the joy, the hope, the emunah, the faith. So, if you were asked truly, let's just pick New Orleans or Las Vegas. I got a New Orleans girl here. Formerly New Orleans girl. Born and raised in New Orleans. Up in the sound booth up there. So, none of us could probably say we're totally oblivious to stuff that goes on in New Orleans. Or has gone on historically in New Orleans. Or in Las Vegas. Or in Houston. Or if the Bells were here, I'd talk about Cleveland, Texas, which they've got an experience with. None of us are oblivious to the stuff that's going on. And in the reality of the matter is, none of those cities are any better than Sodom and Gomorrah. No. If you think it's a qualitative difference between the sin of Sodom and Gomorrah and the sin of Dallas, or the sin of Houston, or the sin of Hooks, or Genoa, you're missing the entire point here. The issue is not that those cities were worse. The issue is that the people of the living God had no vision for those cities. For redemption, for restoration, for hope. The people of God, the only ones who were there was Lot and his family, and all they was, don't hurt me. Don't take away what's mine. Don't be so judgmental and critical toward my people. All selfish, all self-willed. And so now the issue is in our day, in our time, are there 10 in those places? Are there 10 in those places who have a vision beyond that? Or who at least at this particular stage are developing, or who hunger to develop such a vision of the redemptive plan and the strategic initiative of God taking place despite how horrible people are right now? Well, if I didn't have that hope, if we didn't have that hope, then we would sit in our little corners and judge. But if we have that hope and we have that sense of God doing something in this world, we never quit. We just never quit. We keep coming back. We're Joe Frazier. And I don't care how many times Muhammad Ali hits us in the head. We just lower the head and move side to side, put up our gloves, and wade right back into that mess. Some of you too young to remember the Frazier and Ali fights. But if you ever want to watch skill and two different approaches, anyway, I don't want to get caught up in some violent sport, but the idea is there is a way in which we cannot be distracted or beat up and quit because we just see the darkness and the evil and the horror. You just keep. There's a famous old line, and I won't tell you the background of the story because you won't have time to grasp and understand why it could function in that context. But the old story has this moral at the end of it. Why do you keep doing what you're doing is asked of this old Jew. Why do you just keep doing this over and over again? And he says, a Jew never stops doing what a Jew does. People of the kingdom of heaven, you call it whatever you wish. Followers of the way. We don't stop doing what people of the followers of the way do. This is who we are. This is our identity. This is our mission. This is our purpose. The fact that we get slapped or beat up or yelled at or cursed or taxed or put in concentration camps or put in incinerators doesn't stop us from doing what we're called to do, because of the grand romance and the grand romancer and the King of heaven who brings us to like areas. So the question I have is, what fate do you want for your city? Do you want whole neighborhoods wiped out? Just take Beverly out. Take Ellie out. No, send some of us in. Send some of us in. Send people who don't judge and don't criticize and who are willing to see potential and possibility in little ones and children and poor ones and broken ones and widows and divorced ones and prostitutes if necessary. Send us in. That's the key. So how do you deal with your Sodom and Gomorrah syndrome? What is your approach to the Sodom and Gomorrah nature of the cities around us? And what part do you think God has assigned you, the Holy One of Israel, the Messiah, has assigned you to serve in this day, in this place? Well, we've got that syndrome. We also have another syndrome that's referenced in this parsha. The bondwoman and her son syndrome. Somewhere along the way, probably whenever they went to Egypt the first time, and Sarah was taken into a harem for whatever reasons in Pharaoh's kingdom, and then they found out that Sarah was married, and they give Sarah back to Avram, and Avram leaves, but he gets all this gold and wealth and money and stuff, and servants. And somewhere in the course of getting a servant, more than likely that's where she came from, Hagar, this Egyptian, some call her a princess. She becomes not just a menial task servant. She's the head of the household, the governess of the household of Sarah. She is her right arm, the shifka. This is not just some sort of, slave. She's in her household. She's given to her to be this blessing to her household. So we have this blessing picked up, this Hagar picked up. And somewhere along the road, we pick up stuff, and we pick up people. And for a time, it looks like they're there, and they're a blessing, and it's kind of a codependent relationship, and mutually beneficial to some degree, and it fulfilling to some degree. But at a certain stage, what we realize is that's one of the childish things we're going to have to leave behind. We'll put aside childish things. And so what's going to happen is we're going to have to deal with the fact that we're saddled, we're albatrossed, with a bunch of stuff from our past, with a bunch of people, with a bunch of ideas, with a bunch of concepts, with a bunch of practices, with a bunch of stuff, religious, social stuff and behaviors that are our bondwoman. They are our Hagar. And they have offspring. Oh, my soul, when we interact with those things that were not born for us, not designed for us from the beginning of foundation of the world, those things which are not of emunah, those things which are not of tikva, those things which are not of ahava. Oh, what ugly offspring. What dangerous, destructive offspring they bring about. Well, we have to learn how in this process of the divine romance. And this parsha will teach us. There are certain times you just cut the string. And you believe that though there's still affection, there's still attention. This is Abraham's son, Ishmael. And he doesn't want to send out, but he knows he can't have the mocker destroying his household. And so he sends them out, but even though he does so, he has this confidence. He puts a little bit of water and a little bit of bread in a saddlebag on the donkey that he sends out Hagar and Ishmael on. And they go a certain distance, and the bread runs out, and the water's all gone. And Avram had to know that was going to happen. But Avram also had faith and confidence in the Creator of the universe. And so what did happen? What did happen is, as Hagar lays aside and cries out the outcry, an angel of the Creator of the universe appears, not to Avram, not to Yitzhak, not to Sarah, to this Egyptian princess Hagar. And he begins to speak. And all of a sudden her eyes were opened, and she begins to see a spring coming up out of the ground that wasn't there before in her eyes. She couldn't see the spring before. Now she can see the spring bubbling up with fresh, clear water. It's a well. And she goes and she is nurtured and taught and trained by this angel, the angelic forces of God going forth for the sake of those things even we've set aside, cast aside. Avram developed confidence. Now he had to develop this confidence because in addition to Sodom and Gomorrah syndrome and Hagar and the bondwoman and her son syndrome, if the higher stages of divine romance, we run into the Moriah syndrome. And if we didn't learn our lessons in the Sodom and Gomorrah syndrome days and the crucible of Sodom and Gomorrah, if we didn't learn our lesson in the Hagar and Ishmael, we are not going to be able to move in this advanced level of emunah, of trust. But the Holy One is going to say something that sounds a whole lot to our ears, because we read in English. Even in Hebrew, it's a very unusual, hard to understand phrase. Take your son Yitzhak, the only son, the one whom you love, and take him up to the mountain of Moriah, Avram, and there make of him an olah. Now that phrase olah is, I would have put that as one of the extra Hebrew verbs, Allah, to go up, but I didn't have time to do that. So he says, take him up and make him ascend, make him lift up, make him raise up. And Avram didn't hesitate. Why? Why did he not hesitate? I would have hesitated. My child. Because I'm still stuck in Sodom and Gomorrah syndrome. It's all about my family. It's all about my nuclear group. But Avram doesn't hesitate. He's in an advanced stage of divine romance. He's put aside childish things. He's put aside adolescent things about whether this is right or wrong or fair or moral or immoral or whether God should or shouldn't have said it. Doesn't matter. Nothing matters. And if he believed that God, who is his covenant partner, would watch over Ishmael and even Hagar if they were cast away, then why would he not believe that his precious son Yitzhak would be cared for as well? And so we see the process. He gets up early in the morning, takes his donkey, takes a servant with him, takes someone with him. They put wood on Yitzhak's back. They send him up the hill. They go up the hill. They got a flint knife or an utensil of some variety. Flint knife's the English translation. They got fire. He says he has fire in his hand. I don't know what that looked like. I want to see fire in his hand. He got fire in his hand. He's got wood on Yitzhak's back. He's got there's four things required for what people think of as an olah. There's only one thing missing. The sheep, the lamb. Everything else is there. He's got the fire. He's got the wood. He's got the flint knife or the utensil. So they go up the hill, but as he leaves, he says to the people who wait down below, to the servant down below, hold the donkey. Sometimes I just wish we would get in our heart this inspiration to look at somebody and say, just hold the donkey. I'm going over there. We're going to go over there. And we're going to worship. We're going to lay ourselves out before the Holy One. We're going to submit all this to the Holy One. And then we're coming back. We, the two of us, are coming back. Now, that's a strange way to say if you think Abraham believed that what was going to happen is Yitzhak was going to die on that mountain. No, he believed he was going to be brought forth on that mountain. He believed something was going to happen because something happened he had a history. He had a resume with the creator of the universe that God takes care of his own. And so he goes fully expecting and telling the servant, we're coming back. Hold the donkey. So next time somebody tells you something's impossible, something can't happen, this is the way it's going to end, this is the way it's going to be, this is how bad it is, just look at him and smile and say, hold the donkey. Hold the donkey. We're coming back. He's coming back. We're coming back. We're in this road. We're on the way of the Holy One. We're in Zadok, and we're in Safat territory here. And the kingdom is coming. And so, of course, what happens? He gets there, and he's ready to the very extent of picking up this utensil in his hand, bound. He binds Isaac, binding and loosing. He binds Isaac. He binds his around, and Isaac never says, "No, Dad, no," because he's learned from his father. He's got a pattern to show, a model to show that somehow this is going to work its way out too. That is bigger than just my flesh, my pain, that my experience, or how far this is going to have to go. It's not a bit. It's about something bigger than that. And so all the way, ready to, and all of a sudden the same voice that Avram's heard before, the most beautiful sound in the earth, speaks again. It's the same angel the angel of the Holy One that Hagar heard. And he says, "Do not touch the lad." He intervenes, and then he says, and Avram looks. He opens his Vayera, Ra'ah. He sees beyond what you can see because he's on the top of a hill. He's on the crest of Mount Moriah. There's nothing above him. Nothing in the natural realm above him. But he looks up. What is nothing? But he doesn't see nothing. What does he see? He sees a ram caught in a thicket. There's no thicket. Not in the earthly, not in the natural realm. There's no natural realm. He sees beyond the veil. He sees into the unseen realm. In the unseen realm, the lamb was prepared before the foundation of the world. He sees it, and he brings it into the being that on earth, as it is in heaven. Your kingdom come. Your will be done. And he brings it to bear from the heavens into the earth, and the ram is sacrificed. And he says to Avram, the angel says to Avram, now you know and I know that you are not a child anymore. You are not an adolescent. You have put away childish things. And you have become a man. And there remains three: faith, hope, and love. You're here, and I'm here. Now let's go do strategic initiative stuff. Now let's go without any qualms, without any hesitation, without any animosity, without any angst, without any judgment, without any criticism, without any fear. Now let's go forth in the fullness of maturity. Amen. Well, it's time to leave you, probably a little bit over time. But nevertheless, blessings. Thank you for joining us from across the world. All my friends in South Africa and Asia, all throughout Asia, the Philippine Islands, Malaysia, the United Arab Emirates, Israel, Great Britain and the British Isles, Scotland. Thank you for joining us today. Canada, Mexico, all over the United States, from coast to coast and throughout the heartland. Thank you for joining us. If you had a chance to be with us today, if you were blessed, if you have some question or comment or prayer request, please put it down and leave a note that you were here. We just want to pray with you, pray for you, walk with you, share with you this journey, this divine romance. Amen. Shabbat shalom. See you next week.